When Adunni's husband walked back through the door, after 3 months lost on the road to market, she wept with joy. It was him. His face, his voice, his smile. But that night, she began to notice things. He did not eat, he did not sleep, and when she looked closely, he had not aged a single day. The man at her table was not her husband, and she was the only one who could see it. This is the tale of Adunni and Tunde, a folk tale from the soil of eastern Nigeria, the kind your grandmother told you under the moonlight. Before the world had so many lights, Adunni and Tunde had been married only one rainy season. Theirs was a marriage the whole village had smiled upon. The trader's son with the easy laugh, and the potter's daughter with the quick tongue and the gap-toothed smile. "You smile too much," she would tease him. "A serious man does not smile so much." And Tunde would only laugh and say, "Then I will never be a serious man, for I have you." He had given her coral beads on their wedding day, coral the color of the sunset, strung by his own hands. "So that even when I am at market," he said, fastening them at her throat, "a piece of me rests with you." His mother, Mama Nkichi, lived in the next compound and loved Adunni as her own daughter. "A good wife," she would say, leaning on her cane. "My son chose well. Now hurry and give me grandchildren, before I am too old to dance at their naming." It was a small life. It was a good life, and like all good leaves in all old stories, it was about to be tested. On the morning Tunde left for the great market, 3 villages away, Adunni walked him to the edge of the compound. 3 days, he promised, his trade sack over his shoulder. 4 at most, keep the fire warm. "Keep it warm yourself," she called after him. "And bring me salt, the good salt, the grey salt from the coast traders. The cooking has been bland without it." He laughed, he waved. He turned once at the bend in the red road, and she saw his smile flash, and the small scar across his left eyebrow that she had kissed 100 times. And then the bush swallowed the road, and he was gone. 3 days passed. Adunni kept the fire warm. 4 days passed. She cooked his favourite yam and let it grow cold and ate it herself in the dark. On the 5th day, she stopped watching the road in the daylight and began watching it at dusk, which is when the women of that village had always watched for men who had not come home. "The road is long," said Mama Nkechi, though her old hands trembled on her cane. "Traders are delayed by many things: rain, good business, a broken cart on a bad path." But a week became 2, 2 weeks became a month, and the village began to speak of Tunde in the soft, low voices that people keep for the dead. "So young, and only 1 season married. The bush road takes men. It has always taken men." Adunni heard them. She stopped going to the market herself because she could not bear the soft voices, or the way the other women touched her arm. 3 months to the day after Tunde left, she sat alone by her fire. The rains had come and gone, and in the deep quiet of her heart she had begun, at last, to say goodbye. And then a knock at the door. She opened it, and there, in the moonlight, stood her husband. "Tunde," she whispered. "Adunni," he said, and he smiled. She threw herself into his arms, weeping his name again and again. He held her. His arms were strong, his chest was solid. He felt like Tunde. "You came back," she sobbed. "I knew you would come back. I knew it." That first night, she cooked for him yam and egusi, his favourite. She set the steaming bowl before him. "Eat," she said. "You must be starving." "I ate on the road," he said. The food sat untouched until it was cold, and Adunni told herself, "He is tired." The road was long. A man may lose his appetite on a hard road. That night she lay beside him and waited to hear his breathing soften into sleep, the way it always had. the way she had missed for 3 long months. But it never softened, it never came at all. She woke at the deepest hour of the night and found him lying flat on his back, his eyes wide open, staring up at the thatch. "Are you awake?" he said, and he did not blink. In the morning, she watched him at the water basin, and the thing she saw made her hands go cold. He did not wash the road from his skin, because there was no road on his skin, no dust, no sweat of 3 months walking. His feet, which should have been cracked and blistered and ruined from the journey, were smooth and soft as a child's. And then she saw the thing she could not unsee. Tunde had a scar, a thin pale line across his left eyebrow, from a fall as a boy. She had kissed it 100 times. She knew it the way she knew her own hands. She looked at the man in her house in the clear light of morning. The eyebrow was smooth, the scar was gone. That afternoon, the sun came through the open door and laid the shadows of the whole world across the floor. The shadow of the stool, the shadow of the water pot, her own long shadow. But where he stood in all that honest light, there was almost nothing, a faint grey smudge, thin as smoke and the wrong shape entirely. And she understood then, with a cold that began in her belly and spread to every part of her. This was not Tunde. This was something wearing Tunde. She ran to Mama Nkechi. "Something is wrong with him," she whispered. "He does not eat, he does not sleep, he has no scar, he casts no shadow." But Mama Nkechi only wept with joy and held her son's face in her 2 hands. "My boy came home," she said. "Do not bring bad words against my boy, Adunni. Grief has made you see ghosts where there is only a blessing." And worst of all, when Adunni met its eyes across the compound, the thing that wore her husband smiled at her, a slow smile, a knowing smile, as if to say, "You see me, and no one will believe you." It knew that she knew, and it was not afraid. So Adunni did what frightened women have always done in every age, in every village. Before dawn, while the thing lay still on its mat with its open, staring eyes, she crept from her house and walked to the river bend, to the hut of Iamide, the wise woman whom the whole village feared and needed in equal measure. Iamide sat by her fire as though she had been waiting all night. One of her eyes was clouded, white and blind. The other was sharp as a fresh blade. "Sit, daughter," she said, before Adunni had spoken a single word. "You have brought a cold thing into your warm house, and now you cannot get it out." "Yes, I know. The river told me you were coming." "What is it?" Adunni whispered.
"When a man dies alone on a far road, sometimes a bush spirit takes his face and walks home in his place. To be fed, to be loved, to be warm."
And when a man dies alone on a far road, sometimes such a spirit takes up his face, like a cloth left behind, and walks home in his place. To live the life he can no longer live, to be fed, to be loved, to sleep warm in a wife's house, slowly drinking the warmth out of it, year by year, until there is nothing left. Then Tunde is. Adunni could not finish. "The road took him," Iamide said, more gently now. "3 months ago, as you have felt in your heart. I am sorry, daughter. The thing in your house is not your grief. It is not a blessing. It is a thief, and it is patient. And it means to wear your husband until you are old and empty and gone." Adunni wept, but the wise woman caught her wrist with a strong, dry hand. "Weep later," she said. "First, do you want it gone?" "Yes," Adunni breathed. "Tell me how." "These spirits have one weakness," said Iamide. "They wear the shape of the living, but they are made of the bush, of dead leaf and old root and the dust of the forest floor. And the bush cannot abide what comes from the deep sea. Salt, daughter, sea salt, the true grey salt from the coast. She gave a thin smile. The very thing your husband told you to bring home, and never could.
One grain.
She pressed a small
In
twist
its
of cloth
food or
into
its
Adunni's
water.
hands. Inside was coarse grey sea salt. 1 grain, said Iamide. In its food or its water, you do not need more. 1 grain of the true sea, and the bush cannot hold the borrowed shape together. But hear me well, daughter, and here her voice dropped very low. Be certain it does not see. You
But
do
be
it.
certain.
These things are old, and they are clever, and a
Certain
cornered
it does
spirit
not
is
see
a
you do
dangerous
it.
spirit. And if I am wrong? Adunni asked, her voice shaking. If by some mercy it truly is him, and I have only been a frightened, foolish wife? Iamide's sharp eye did not blink. Then a single grain of salt will only make his soup taste of the sea, she said, and he will smile and say his wife has finally learned to cook. There is no harm in the test, daughter. There is only harm in not daring to make it. Remember that. Real love has nothing to fear from a grain of salt. That evening, Adunni cooked. She made pepper soup, rich and red, the kind that hides 1,000 flavors, the kind in which a single grain might never be tasted at all. Her hands shook as she worked. Across the room, the thing that wore her husband watched her with its patient,
You are
knowing
nervous
eyes.
tonight, wife.
You are nervous tonight, wife,
No
it
husband.
said. I
Just
am
the
only
soup.
happy you are home, she answered, and she did not turn around. And then, the moment. She turned her body to shield her hands. The way a woman does when she adds a secret spice she does not want her mother-in-law to learn. She unfolded the cloth. A single grey grain sat in her trembling palm, no bigger than a seed. Her whole life and the memory of his balanced on it. She let it fall into the pot. It vanished into the red without a sound. She stirred once. She ladled the soup into his bowl, and her hands grew steadier now that it was done, and she carried it to him and set it down. Eat, she said softly.
You always said no one
You
made pepper
always
soup
said
like me.
no one made pepper soup like me. The thing looked at the bowl, then it looked up at her, and for a long, long moment it did not move. You never cook for yourself, it said slowly. Why do you not eat with me, wife? Her heart slammed against her ribs.
Cook's privilege.
I ate while cooking, she said. A cook's privilege. Eat, husband, before it grows cold. The silence stretched between them, thin as a held breath. And then, perhaps because even a spirit, when it wears a man's hunger, comes to want what the man wanted, it lifted the bowl in both hands, and it drank. It made a sound she would hear in her dreams for the rest of her life. Not a scream, a long, dry sigh, like wind moving through dead branches in an empty forest. The borrowed face cracked and dried like a leaf thrown on a fire. The strong arms came apart. The whole shape of her husband folded inward and crumbled. And where the thing had sat, there was now only a heap of dry brown leaves, a tangle of bare twigs, and a scattering of red bush dust. Already cooling, already still. The empty bowl rolled from the leaves and rang once against the floor. Adunni did not scream. She sat down slowly on the floor of her home, among the cooling leaves of the thing that had worn her husband's face, and she wept. Not for it, but for what its coming had finally told her. For 3 months she had hoped against hope. Now she knew. Tunde was not late. Tunde was not delayed. Tunde was gone. At first light, she gathered the leaves
Go home.
into a cloth, as the wise woman had told her she must, and carried them to the edge of the deep bush, and scattered them back among the trees where they belonged. Go home,
leave the
she
living
whispered to the dark
to the
trees,
living.
and leave the living to the living. And the next morning, the true morning, as Adunni sat hollow-eyed beside her cold fire, there came a knock at the door. Her whole body turned to ice. She could not bear it. Not again. Go away, she whispered. "Whatever you are, go away and
Adunni,
leave me my grief."
It is me.
But a voice came through the door. A tired voice. A cracked, weary, utterly human voice. "Adunni, Adunni, it is me. Open the door." "My love, I have walked so very far." She opened it, and there stood Tunde, thin, ragged, his clothes hanging in tatters. A half-healed wound on his arm, 3 hard months of road written into his face. He had been robbed and beaten and left for dead on the far road, he would tell her later, and had crawled and worked and begged and walked his way home across 3 kingdoms to reach her. And there, across his left eyebrow, was the scar. The dust of the real road was on his feet, and when the morning sun rose behind him and came through the door, it laid his long, true, honest shadow across the floor, all the way to her feet. But Adunni did not throw herself into his arms. Not yet. First, and Tunde would laugh about it for the rest of their long lives together. First she ran to the fire and ladled a bowl of cold pepper soup and pressed it into his trembling hands. "Eat," she said. "Eat it now, in front of me." Confused, exhausted, starving, he ate. He ate it all and licked the bowl and asked for more and wept at the taste of his wife's cooking after 3 months of dreaming of it. And only then, did Adunni fall into his arms and let herself believe. Mama Nkechi never fully understood why. For the rest of her days, Adunni kept a small clay pot of grey sea salt by the door and pressed a single grain into the hand of every stranger who came to visit before she would let them cross the threshold. "My daughter has strange habits," she would sigh. But Tunde understood, and he never once teased her for it. And in that village, when the grandmothers tell this tale under the moonlight, they always end it the same way. "Love is a precious thing, child. So precious that even the bush will try to wear its face and warm itself at its fire. So when the dearest one returns to you, and something deep and quiet in your heart whispers that something is wrong, do not be ashamed to listen. Do not be afraid to test what you love, for real love has nothing to fear from a single grain of salt. Treat softly, child, but test wisely. The moon is watching."
But test wisely. The moon is watching.